Labour is pulling back a number of the people that are on the progressive side of politics, left of centre, if you like, and who drifted away, in particular to the Greens, to some extent to the Liberal Democrats. They seem, in significant numbers, to be coming back to Labour. But there's also some, not as many, but there are some people who defected from Labour to Reform who are also going back to Labour. But the other thing that's happening, which helps Labour overtake Reform, has been the decline of Reform.
Now, polling for the Times puts Labour ahead of Reform UK for the first time in 18 months. It's a survey from YouGov, and it follows some other polling that nudges in this direction as well. Peter Kellner joins us, former president of YouGov. Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
Is the Burnham bounce real and here to stay then?
Yes, it's real. Is it here to stay? I don't know. Polls tell you what was happening a couple of days ago. They're not certain about predicting the future. But the bounce has stayed there for the last, it must be 3 weeks since he became party leader. The polls show that people like him, and increasingly they're liking Labour. Will it last into the autumn? Well, we'll see.
Yeah. What party, I suppose, is suffering so that Labour can flourish here? Just break down some of the data for us.
The main thing that's happening is that Labour is pulling back a number of the people that are on the progressive side of politics, left of centre, if you like, and who drifted away, in particular to the Greens, to some extent to the Liberal Democrats. They seem, in significant numbers, to be coming back to Labour. But there's also some, not as many, but there are some people who defected from Labour to Reform who are also going back to Labour. But the other thing that's happening, which helps Labour overtake Reform, has been the decline of Reform. That's quite clear. And Reform have been losing, to some extent, to the Conservatives, a little bit to Labour, but of course also to Restore, the Rupert Lowe breakaway from Reform. So you've seen Labour gaining, particularly on the left, and Reform losing, particularly on the right.
Yeah. Burnham also does well in people's perceptions of who would be the best Prime Minister, and that's a key indicator, isn't it, as to, I suppose, his electoral prospect?
Yes, it is. And there was a poll by Lord Ashcroft over the weekend, a big 5,000 sample, which had Burnham the favourite choice by 44%. And if I remember correctly, Kerry Badenoch is on 17, and Nigel Farage on 15. Those really are pretty good results. This may be a honeymoon, but as you say, when we get towards a general election, when we get away from midterm, get away from protest voting and so on, and people are choosing the government, then who makes the best Prime Minister? There's only been one occasion when that's not been an infallible sign of the winner, and that was when James Callaghan, in some polls, was leading Margaret Thatcher, even though Margaret Thatcher won the 1979 election. But only people like me are old enough to be around then. Since then, the favourite to be, the most popular person to be Prime Minister has also been the one who's won the election.
Peter, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
It's Peter Kellner, former president of YouGov. Josh, are you happy to say that the Burnham bounce is real, that it's a thing?
It's definitely real.
Yeah.
How long it sustains for is subject to lots of events, and we'll see. I think the point Peter made there is very apposite, which is about progressive voters. There's not that many Reform Labour switchers at the moment. But what Burnham has done from day one here is quite effective, which is he's created what I would call a permission structure for progressive voters who had left Labour to come back. I think there's a lot of progressive voters out there who feel very attached to certain causes and a certain vibe in their politics. They want to feel that they're on the side of the angels. They're not necessarily paying day-to-day attention to every twist and turn on policy. And so when you saw Burnham come out the gate, straight away he said, well, we got it wrong on Gaza. And I think that was a massive deal, because for a lot of people, that is their, number one or two moral concern at the moment. And that gave some of those people permission to come back and say it was okay to say they're voting Labour again, because they couldn't say they could vote for Keir Starmer. And other things like just, letting Diane Abbott back in the party, for example, sends a bat signal to those progressive voters, actually not a bat signal, just a signal, that...
Why are you bringing the bats into it? What have they done?
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the bats. It's, it's nice to come in, the water's warm, horrid Keir Starmer's gone with his, horrid centrism, and Cuddly Andy's back, and it's the Labour Party you used to know and vaguely like, and I think that's been really effective. One thing Peter didn't mention there is also that the Greens have had a pretty rough time of things. I think Zach Polanski is not fit for prime time, frankly, and has been exposed in a number of different ways. In terms of his performance, very odd internet behaviour, sort of retweeting inappropriate things, reposting inappropriate things. I just don't think he's going to work, and that balloon has rather deflated for now. So that's the other thing that's helping the Burnham bounce. Yeah. But we'll see how far it goes.
And indeed, Labour's rise in support has come primarily at the expense of the Greens. They're actually down 1 point on 12%, still ahead of the Lib Dems on 11%, interestingly. Jill, what are you making of the Burnham bounce and that kind of where it's coming from?
I think people are just interested again. I mean, I think, let's face it, I've always said I'm not mad keen on political speeches, but most people, when they see Keir Starmer stood at a lectern, like, how many people are going to go, oh, turn off the radio, I want to listen to this one, I'll watch the telly and see what he's got to say. It just doesn't strike me that's really where he connected. The media was not a strong point for him, and I think what's interesting is that firstly the media are interested in what Burnham's got to say, so he's probably getting a bit more airtime anyway and a few more column inches. But also the social media strategy has been smart, even quite frankly if it's just annoyed some more traditional journalists because they feel that they should be getting more access or they should have been able to ask questions. But even the fact that he came in and sort of said, I'm going to do it my way, was sort of interesting. And I think the public are waking up a little bit to the politicians that are looking slightly different to the traditional. So that's where Farage has always really done well, in that he will just stand up and be outraged about something, and maybe the policy doesn't quite stand up, but you know what? Oh, he sounds like he sounds like he gets it, and he sounds like he cares. And I think there's been a bit of a void there for a while, and I think Andy Burnham is just filling that void quite well. There's regular content coming out. There's stuff that's interesting. It's going out to a different audience. The career ladder, the pub snacks with John Healey. It's not just... I think the team have sort of realised that what they needed to do was help people get to know who he actually is. And because he hadn't had the election campaign, he hadn't had those big speeches. And so that's quite an important part for people thinking, yeah, I might give him a shot.
I think that election campaign thing is interesting, because are we now in, not an election campaign, but is he in kind of campaigning mode with this cost of living tour that he's doing around the country? And I think, Josh, trying to convey these relatable announcements, I think, is the way I'm describing them. So they might not change the world, but people can connect with them. Vape shops, electricity bills, bus fares, making it easier to get out of subscriptions. These sorts of, they're relatable. They're not earth-shattering, but they feel real.
I think he's quite conscious that he came into number 10 through a slightly unorthodox route. Yeah. He didn't win a general election. There are a lot of people in the country, they might recognise his name, but they don't really know very much about him, and they weren't sold a manifesto with his name on the top of it. So I think he's quite conscious he has to really introduce himself to the country, and he's using social media quite effectively to do that. But he also wanted to create a very clear, distinct breach from Starmer, because he wants to persuade people, as we just discussed, to give Labour a second look and give them a rehearing. So he has to sort of show a different approach, and part of what he's trying to do is say, well, this is the politics of can do. It's breezy, it's optimistic, we're trying here, and I'm going to talk to you very directly. These are all striking a different tone to Starmer. So I think, you know, there's a sense of energy because he wants to really look very busy and impactful, but it's also a real emphatic message to people. I'm different to the last guy. It's the same party, but a very different leader.
And almost, I think energy is a really crucial word, because there is a sense that nothing really happened for the last couple of years, and despite various MPs that were pumping out messages about what the Labour government had achieved, I don't think generally people sort of see that. I don't think they recognise that the Labour government really did anything for them. And so that sort of energy to show that he's in a hurry. I mean, let's face it, he hasn't got that long. Yeah. Because in reality, you're going to call a general election, but you need to have nailed quite a few things. You need to have delivered some stuff before you can call that. So if you are going to go
an early one?
No, I mean, if you're going to go the full term, you've still only really got, let's face it, 2.5 years to then start writing up what the next stuff's going to be and your excuses for what you didn't deliver. So then if you think that's not that long away, now there is also still a chance that he will go earlier, which means if he is going to go earlier, and I'm still not convinced he will, but if he did, then he's really got to hit the ground running, because he's got to get as much out there to look like he's on people's side and that things are in motion, even if they're not delivered, before he gets the chance to do that. So he's got to keep his options open.
I also just think a first impression is so important, particularly in this slightly unorthodox route to power. But generally speaking, a lot of people voted Labour, didn't like what they got, and now he's come and said, OK, well, that guy wasn't working, I'm going to replace him. And you really got to convince people within a month or two, I think.
Yeah.
And so far, I think they'll be pretty... I couldn't really have gone that much better for him. But as we discussed on the early half of this show, he's already had this wobble over early release. Plenty of other things will crop up.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very difficult autumn in terms of fiscal choices and the budget, and what taxes they're going to put up and how they're going to fund the 4.7 billion hole in the defence investment plan. All these quite knotty fiscal decisions, and they're not going to be particularly popular. So even if things go to plan, it still will be quite a sort of crunchy and difficult time.
But I don't know about you, but it feels like the government have just been doing more in the last few weeks than they did for significant periods of Keir Starmer's time.
There is a momentum, isn't there?
Well, yeah, but there was also that sense that some days there wasn't a government minister out, or it was a really flimsy sort of, we found this down the back of the sofa kind of announcement because they just needed something.
But, I mean, do you think they really are doing more? I mean, obviously he's had quite a sort of strong, energetic sort of flurry of announcements and policies, but they're quite small beer, a lot of them. So some of them are just, the bigger stuff is just aspiration. I want to fix social care. Okay, well, sure, but let's judge that in 10 years' time. But how much do you think they're really doing more versus just communicating better and sort of grabbing the narrative and using the microphone and the bully pulpit?
See, I think if you actually talk to people who are struggling with the cost of living, for example, the subscription thing is really smart, because your kids will have signed up to something, probably here might be speaking a little bit from experience.
This is making subscriptions
easier to cancel.
Sure.
They are the things that actually do affect people. So they are, quite frankly, it's not for the government to do. If people are silly enough to sign up for something and don't think to cancel it, that's on them to some extent. But the reality is the government are saying, look, there is actually something here we could do. There is something more we could do to help people with that. And then when you look at things like social care, OK, in theory, what actually was announced? Well, for the first time, as somebody who's been a lifelong carer, I saw a man stand up in a room and say, my dad is ill. My dad, he's talked since about how his dad doesn't even know he's become Prime Minister. He gave a really emotional hug to his mum on Downing Street when he was going in on his first day. And he stood there and basically said, we've got to speed this up. Now, to some extent, that was Keir Starmer's fault, because Louise Casey was given the grooming gang stuff to sort out, as well as the social care review that she was given. And if you think about it, even just hearing a Prime Minister say that they understand about the 15-minute visit that people get at home, there was a real sense of this is someone, if you get it, you're halfway there to a solution. Because one of the biggest problems that organisations have is trying to convince the government and get inside their heads and their hearts about what needs to be done. So while they might not be massive to some people, the energy bill stuff, VAT, some of it has been really practical. Some of it has been, do you know what, government can step in and try and make people's lives easier. That's got to be more impressive than letting people have some money off when they go to Chessington World of Adventures, which actually got shut down yesterday because there was no water.
But Starmer and Reeves did in the last 6 months of their government, they did loads of stuff on cost of living. They took 150 quid off energy bills at the budget. It's a massive chunk. And they did all sorts of stuff on business rates for retail organisations and institutes. So they did do a lot, but no one was listening by that point. You know, I think they'll be watching this thinking, well, we pulled quite a lot of the same levers, maybe not all of them, but we didn't get a hearing, and they might blame themselves for that, they might blame other people. But, you know, sometimes you could have almost the same policy being announced by Andy Burnham now and Keir Starmer 6 months ago and have a completely different result.
The vapes stuff today is actually not a terrible example of that, because I think it is a bit reheated from the Starmer era.
Of course it is.
Yeah.